want folks to think I doubted this. My whole soul was in it.
In 1861, the United States was ravaged by the Civil War, initially a war to preserve the Union. The deep issue that would soon become impossible to avoid was slavery. The Confederacy consisted of southern states in which enslaved labor was integral to economic survival, particularly in the heavy production of cotton. Slavery was deeply ingrained in their social and economic systems, and its abolition was seen as a direct threat to their way of life. The northern states, having abolished slavery, sought to prevent further secession and reunite the Union. President Abraham Lincoln, despite his personal opposition to slavery, had not initially targeted slavery but sought first to preserve the Union. He tolerated slavery in border states and areas under Union control to avoid alienating key regions. But as the war wore on, it became impossible to disentangle the Confederate rebellion from the issue of slavery. Influenced by abolitionists, the shift in public opinion allowed Lincoln to see that striking at slavery could weaken the will of Confederacy to fight and redefine the moral purpose of the Union. By 1862, Lincoln had concluded that slavery needed to end, both as a strategic military measure to weaken the Confederacy and as a moral commitment to freedom and equality. This resolve culminated in the issuance of the Emancipation Proclamation on January 1, 1863. Transforming the Civil War from a political struggle to preserve the Union into a moral battle against slavery, as Lincoln declared.
All persons held as slaves within any state or designated part of a state shall be then, thenceforward, and forever free.
This powerful statement by President Abraham Lincoln marked a pivotal moment in American history. Issued in 1863 during the Civil War, this document directly challenged the structure of slavery and the Southern economy that was reliant on it. While it freed thousands of enslaved African Americans in Confederate territories, it also set the stage for the eventual passage of the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendments. By doing so, the proclamation redefined the government's responsibility to protect individual rights, signaled a profound shift in the nation's values, and established itself as one of the most significant documents in U.S. history. Lincoln's Emancipation Proclamation, issued on January 1, 1863, gave the war a fundamentally new character. The war began as a war to preserve the Union, and it became a moral crusade against slavery in a manner that marked a definite turning point in the aims of the war. To begin with, the major objective of the Union was national preservation. President Abraham Lincoln tolerated slavery within the border states to keep the states loyal. But as the war took a turn, the centrality of slavery in sustaining the Confederacy could no longer be sidestepped. The proclamation redefined the war as a moral struggle for freedom and thus gave a great boost to the Union's cause both at home and abroad. The international impact of the proclamation was profound. Britain and France, initially considering recognizing the Confederacy for economic reasons, could no longer justify supporting a nation that sought to preserve slavery. These two factors made intervention politically impossible. With Britain's powerful abolitionist movement and a growing public inclination in favor of the Union, British Prime Minister Lord Palmerston acknowledged that any support for the South would equate to endorsing slavery, a stance that would have been politically untenable in Britain. In addition, the proclamation galvanized public opinion, especially among abolitionists in Britain, who supported the Union even more fervently. This turn of events put tremendous pressure on both Britain and France to remain neutral, thereby isolating the Confederacy diplomatically. The proclamation also initiated mass migration of enslaved people to the Union lines, which disturbed the Southern economy by reducing sources of labor that were vital for agriculture and industry. This shortage of labor crippled the Confederate economy and weakened its military capabilities, further undermining the South's ability to continue the war effort. In effect, the Emancipation Proclamation not only reshaped the conflict internally, but also played a critical role in isolating the Confederacy on the global stage. The Emancipation Proclamation enabled African Americans to join the Union Army and thus fight for their freedom. More than 180,000 African American soldiers joined the Union, of which the 54th Massachusetts Regiment was one of the most important units. Its participation showed the capability and commitment of black soldiers and changed racial prejudices that had long existed in the military and greater society. The 54th Massachusetts Regiment's heroism in the 1863 assault on Fort Wagner is considered a defining moment of the Civil War. In brutal fighting, the regiment showed outstanding courage despite heavy casualty incurred. Their bravery was evident to not only their military capabilities, but also that the African American soldiers were no less dedicated and as capable as their white counterparts. This change in perception boosted morale among Union forces, but also brought widespread recognition to the contribution of African Americans in the war effort. Their sacrifice called for even further recruitment of black soldiers and solidified the legitimacy of African American participation in the Union Army. The legacy that was left by the 54th Massachusetts Regiment went beyond the battlefield to one which directly influenced public opinion and the abolitionist cause. Their valorous acts helped to alter Northern attitudes toward racial equality and stiffen the determination of abolitionists. As African Americans fought for their freedom on the front lines, they became symbols of resistance and hope for enslaved people across the South. Motivating many to flee to Union lines, this massive exodus disrupted the entire Confederate economy, depriving it of much-needed agricultural and industrial labor, which made it even weaker in continuing the war effort. It was here that the 54th Regiment played a crucial role in the military and economic weakening of the Confederacy. The proclamation paved the way for the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendments, which were crucial to giving African Americans equal rights. Each dealt with, respectively, one of the three key issues from the period after the Civil War. There is the abolition of slavery itself, determining citizenship, and protection for voting rights. Essentially, these amendments are testaments to the groundwork the Emancipation Proclamation established. The 13th Amendment, passed in 1865, gave official abolition to slavery in the United States. The Emancipation Proclamation had already declared freedom to enslaved people in the Confederate States, but it was a wartime measure with certain limitations. The 13th Amendment made that promise permanent, erasing slavery from the laws of the nation. The 14th Amendment, ratified in 1868, granted citizenship to all people born or naturalized in the United States, including formerly enslaved individuals. It also guaranteed equal protection under the law. The proclamation had reframed the fight against slavery as a moral cause, which paved the way for these broader protections. Without that shift in perspective, it is unlikely the country would have embraced such a sweeping change. The 15th Amendment, ratified in 1870, guaranteed that no state could deny anyone the right to vote because of race, color, or previous condition of servitude. The proclamation had already inspired African Americans to assert their claims on a new future by joining the Union cause. The 15th Amendment built on that momentum, recognizing their role in shaping the nation. These were no spontaneous amendments. The Emancipation Proclamation laid a groundwork, reconstituted the purposes of the Union, and made the nation think twice about what it was called valuables. And though the proclamation solved little, if anything, it started America in earnest towards a new birth in freedom and equality. The Emancipation Proclamation was a transformative document in American history, reshaping the Civil War into a fight not just for the Union, but for freedom and justice. Its impact extended beyond its immediate wartime effects, paving the way for the abolition of slavery, the recognition of African Americans as equal citizens, and their enfranchisement through the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendments. By undermining the Southern economy, galvanizing Northern morale, and isolating the Confederacy diplomatically, the proclamation helped ensure Union victory and laid the foundation for America's ongoing struggle towards equality. The bravery of African American soldiers, exemplified by the 54th Massachusetts Regiment, further highlighted the moral urgency of abolition and inspired a broader reimagining of racial equality in the United States. While the proclamation itself did not end slavery, it marked a decisive step toward a nation defined by the principles of freedom and human rights.